Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about World War III and what I think it is likely to look like. Okay, just my opinion. If you got some opinions of your own, please put them in the comment section and we'll have a conversation about it. But World War III would be very different from the prior World Wars. Because World War I, the focus was basically on the soldiers of one side trying to kill the soldiers of the other side, right? Or trying to kill them and occupy, occupy the land, take territory. But it was the emphasis was mostly soldiers fighting soldiers, or people driving war machines trying to destroy other people driving various war machines. But it was military versus military. Okay, World War II, although of course you had soldiers fighting each other, the winning strategy, right? The overall strategy was to try and defeat the other side's industry. Okay, so the goal was to destroy the factories that produced the war machinery and basically supported the men that were fighting. And one of the big targets was trying to actually target those factories. However, World War II bombing was not very precise. So although in many cases they did either attempt or succeed in destroying some of the factories, they realized that, hey, they weren't really good at it. So one of the things that they tried to do was, instead of destroying the factories, destroy the people that work in the factories. Okay, so we saw a lot of saturation bombing of cities, all right, in an effort to kill off as much of the population as possible, so those people couldn't run the factories. So that was the World War II strategy. Okay, World War III completely different, because the people as far as the countries that would most likely be engaged in World War III, in this case we're talking about United States and Russia. Those people mostly don't work in factories. Okay, they mostly import their stuff from third world countries. So the goal there would be the opposite. You don't want to kill the people. In fact, you want to keep those people alive. Okay, and try to get them, right, to fight their own governments and fight each other. And that's why I say that World War III would more likely than not resemble civil war more than anything else. Okay, because here's the thing: everybody around the world knows that in the United States we don't produce a whole lot. They know that we are a consumer economy. So there's no point in killing people that don't produce anything. However, if you can if you can cut off the food supply and the energy supply to those people are now going to get very desperate, and they're going to do very desperate things. So in the World War III type of scenario, okay, the primary targets, the number one targets, would be the oil fields and the ports. Okay, now why oil? Why not other energy sources? I mean, yeah, we've got like windmills scattered throughout the country. However, they're not condensed. They're not all in one spot. The oil refineries and the oil reserves, they're all condensed in certain areas. So those are easy targets. So you don't have to completely destroy 100% of a country's energy. If you hit all of the oil production facilities, and that knocks out, let's say, at least 50 to 60% of the country's energy sources, that's going to cause a lot of chaos. Okay, so the number one target would be the oil and the ports. The ports, because again, we import a lot of the goods. If you look at the ships that basically deliver the goods from around the world, they're huge. They're gigantic ships. Those ships can only go to a very small number of ports that have harbors that are deep enough to accommodate those ships. Okay, so there's a very limited number of ports, and if you destroy those ports, now you can't bring those ships into harbor to unload them. Okay, so the number one targets are the oils and ports. Okay, The secondary targets would be the railroads and the communications. Okay? Now, of course, the railroads are scattered all over the country. However, if the thing about railroads, if you destroy like a railroad hub, that's going to cause a great deal of damage. Okay, and so again, the railroad and because the railroads, I mean, if you destroy a section of a railroad system, it shuts down the entire system. Again, that's what makes this a very likely target, but as a secondary target. And of course, the communications, right? Again, because there's only so many different communications companies. If you target them, you destroy the communication hubs, the entire communication system is going to start crumbling. Okay, so those are going to be the primary targets. Okay, now the goal, the thing that this is trying to produce by targeting these things over here, because again, like I said, we're not targeting the populations, right? What both sides are going to try and do is get the people to freeze and starve. Okay, now in the United States, right? The northern part of the United States, the winters get really cold. Temperatures drop down to, well below zero. Okay, if you cut off the oil supply, right, that's going to cause basically people are going to freeze to death before they starve to death. Okay, because you probably got about 2 weeks of food in your house. If the temperature drops, below freezing, and your oil tank is out, right, you're not going to last more. You're not going to last a day. Okay, and what people are going to do in that desperate situation is they're going to stop burning furniture. Okay, they're going to stop burning things in their house to desperately try and stay warm. And most houses are not equipped with a proper fireplace. So what that's going to do is that's going to start chain fires, right? Each house is going to burn, and it's going to start burning every other house. People that don't live out in the woods think that not a problem, we're just going to go cut down trees, and no, it does not work. I live with trees. Okay, you can't just cut down a tree, chop it up, and throw it into a fire, because those trees are full of water. Okay, after you chop down the tree, you pretty much have to let it sit and dry for about a year before you can use it as firewood. Okay, so you cannot just chop down trees and basically just throw them into the fire, because they're wet on the inside. Okay, so it's not what people think. There's a lot of preparation that goes into creating firewood. Okay, so what people are going to start doing is they're going to start burning things in their houses, and they're going to burn their houses down. They're going to burn down their neighbors' houses, and it's going to create a panic. Okay, and so that's another reason why it is likely that if they were going to time it, they were going to probably time this in the wintertime to create that additional panic. And of course, the other thing is food. You guys saw in 2020 what happened with the great toilet paper shortage, right? I mean, there was, the supermarkets ran out of toilet paper within what, like 2 days? All right. Imagine what happens when the food runs out. Okay. Supermarkets only have about 2 or 3 days supply of food, if that much. Okay. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of organization to get the food to where it's supposed to go. And if you knock out the oil and you can't put fuel in the trucks, the food is not going to get to the population areas. Okay, so that's also going to create panic. Pretty much most people have about 2 weeks of food in their house. They might be able to stretch it out to a month. After a month, people are going to start getting like stupid crazy. Okay, that's when you realize that this concept of a zombie apocalypse is actually based on reality. Okay, when people get hungry, just like when rats get hungry, right? When they starve, they start eating each other. Okay, people will eat each other. People have done that throughout history. There's a great video on the internet called Cannibal Island. Okay, Stalin had taken a whole bunch of people and basically thrown them into an island prison. Didn't give them food. Did not take them long before the people started eating each other. Okay, that is the natural thing, right? People will do that. Animals will do that. They get desperate enough. you know, they're going to eat each other, okay? So that's going to be there's going to be two sources of food, right? In a World War III type of situation, human meat and also dog meat, right? Because what's going to happen is the dogs are going to go wild, right? Basically the dogs are going to go out. They're going to be, sooner or later, there's going to be bodies in the streets, right? They're going to be corpses. The dogs are going to start feeding on those corpses. They're going to prosper for a short period of time, right? They're going to be, you know, and they're going to start multiplying. And what's going to happen is people are going to start hunting the wild dogs, okay? So that's a good option to you know, that's a good thing to kind of have in the back of your mind as far as surviving a World War III type of scenario. The dogs and cats and other animals that eat meat, you know, and don't care what kind of meat they eat, you know, they're gonna do very well. Chickens, I got lots of chickens. Chickens will eat anything, okay? If you lay down and stay motionless, chickens will come over and they would start pecking at you, okay? So chickens will eat humans. There's no question about that. So that's, you know, now, again, a lot of people think that if you got chickens, they live off the land, okay? They don't live off the land. You got to basically supply them with corn, okay? Which, you know, I regularly buy. If I can't get corn to feed the chickens, I got nothing to feed the chickens. So the natural thing is for me to look for alternative food sources for the chickens, okay? And if, you know, if that happens to be a corpse it is, okay? So that's the thing to know with chickens. I can tell you guys, if chickens actually had teeth, all right, they would probably be dominating the planet, okay? Good thing that they only got beaks, because chickens will eat anything that stays more. They'll eat each other, all right? In fact, one of my neighbor's chickens got hit by a car, all right, and the other chickens just came and started eating it, you know. I mean, that's what chickens do. Chickens eat anything. They're really good at surviving, okay? But the other thing to consider is a lot of people think that World War III food scarcity, they're gonna start planting, right? They're gonna have a garden. They're gonna grow food all of a sudden, okay? Does not work that way. First of all, there's a lot of preparation that goes into growing food. You gotta plant at the right time, all right? So there's some timing involved. You got to have the right equipment to be able to break the ground, you know. And of course, after you plant it, it's not like you're going to get food the next day. It takes, you know, several months before you actually get food. So now, again, there's planning involved here that has to go on a yearly basis, right? You gotta know when the food when your crop's going to come up, and then you got to be able to, you know, that's got to last you a whole year. So nobody's going to be prepared for that. And I can tell you guys that, like a guy like me, I have tractors. I do light farming, okay? My tractors need diesel to run, okay? If I don't have oil, I can't plant anything, okay? So I'll tell you guys a story that I heard from my father. My father grew up, was a child in Europe during World War II. And of course, I had also spoken to my grandfather, who was older, okay? So in the part of Europe that I was in, okay, it was well, not me, I was in, but my parents were in. It was invaded by the Germans, okay? And it was occupied, okay? Now, in some parts of the country, there was war going on. And in some parts of the country, lots of civilians were killed because of the war, okay? In the town where my family was, okay, there was no fighting, okay, and I asked them, how did the war affect you? And they were, you know, now again, my father was a child, my grandfather, right? Didn't affect them at all. They hardly knew a war was going on, okay, even though just a couple, 100 miles away there was actual fighting. In their town, it did not affect them at all, and the reason for that is because at that time, they didn't have tractors. They basically farmed with animals. Okay, so the fact that there was a war going on someplace a few hundred miles away, or just 100 miles away, it did not affect their ability to grow food. They just continued farming the way they had always done. Okay, completely unaffected by the war, because their economy was very localized. Okay, they used their own animals. You know, they had their own, you know, their own work cycle that was not dependent on any other part of the country. Everything was very isolated. Okay, so same town now, right, in Europe, right? Today, that won't work, because in that same town, everybody has tractors that work on diesel. If they can't get diesel into the tractors, they can't grow food. So the same town, whereas back in the 40s was completely self-sufficient because of the way that they did their farming, today there would be starvation in that same town because they're dependent on oil. Okay, so the point I'm bringing out here is that the farmers, right, will starve just as fast as the people in the cities, because they're dependent on oil to grow the food. So regardless, and here's the thing, you know, even if they have animals, those animals like the chickens and the cattle, they're dependent on things that are farmed. You cannot have cattle, chickens, pigs, unless you have a means to feed them, and the means to feed them usually comes out of the ground. And there's a few of them, right, like chickens that I mentioned, and probably pigs that will eat anything. And those are the animals that, you know, if you've got some land, those are the animals that you want on your land. You want animals that will eat anything. Okay. So we talked about that. All right, so just overall review here. What's the goal here? And this is, I mean, not my goal, but what would be the goal of each side in the World War III type of scenario? To get the people to fight their own government, to get the people to fight each other. So they would not want to target the populations, because they want to turn those populations against their own governments. And I can definitely see this working, okay? I can tell you right now, there is nothing, okay? There's absolutely nothing that this government could tell me that would make me go anywhere else in the world and fight other people, right? Because it has been proven to me, and I have seen it myself, that this government lies. So regardless of what they tell me that the Russians may have done, I do not believe them. Okay, now in the United States, this is like a new thing, right? We only recently found out, like in the last 4 years or so, that the U.S. government lies to us. Okay, now some people knew this further back, but at this point, a significant amount of the population has come to realize this and accept this, that it is really hard to motivate people to go fight fight the battles of the United States, right? I'm not going to go fight Russians. I'm not going to go fight Chinese. I'm not going to go fight anybody, because I don't believe anything that this government says. They can say, I don't care what they say about whatever, I don't care what atrocities that government did that they tell me. I don't believe any of it, okay? I mean, they just lie. I mean, if you lie about one thing, you lie about everything else. So they can come out and say that the Russians did this and they killed that many people and they did... there's no reason why I should believe the U.S. government after all the lies that I have seen over the last 4 years. Okay. Now, as far as the Russian people, okay, you know what? They knew this well before we did. Okay. The Russian people have always known that their government lies. You know, they have, you know, their history is full of guys like Lenin and Stalin. You know, so they already know that their government's lie. So it's not very likely that those people will be motivated to come over here and fight Americans, right? So it's not likely that we Americans are going to be motivated to go fight Russians. It's not likely that Russians are going to be motivated by their government to come here and fight Americans. So both sides know this, okay? So both sides, you know, have the only possible winning strategy that either side can employ is to get the people to fight their own government. So the U.S. government would somehow be trying to get the Russian people to turn against their government, which they are doing, right? You know, we know that they've been trying to push some anti-government propaganda through Russia, so that they are doing that, okay? Likewise, is at some point the Russians would try and push anti-government propaganda over here, but the propaganda really isn't the thing. If you cut off these things, right? If you cut off the oil, you shut out the ports so they can't import, you shut down the railroads, you shut down the communications, you know, the people don't need to be told what to do, right? People are going to get desperate, and they're going to do whatever it takes to survive, and that's going to basically be, you know, trying to eat the other person, okay? Or take food from the other person, or take, you know, whatever, firewood from the other person. That's where this is going to end up. So that's why I say that the most likely scenario, if we ever get to World War III, it's going to resemble Civil War more than it's going to resemble World War II or World War I. Okay? So drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe. Follow me on Odyssey, which is an uncensored platform. My channel name over there is Pocono Tactical, and Odyssey is spelled ODYSEE.com. You'll find me over there. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon.